Hello, friends. Are you ready to explore the fascinating world of Foreclosure 2? Released in 2024, this film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're bringing you all the hidden gems, stunning details, and unforgettable moments. If you enjoy this deep dive, be sure to hit that like button. It really helps our channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more exciting movie explorations. Let's jump right in and uncover the magic together. Foreclosure 2. A deep dive into the horror and human emotion behind the haunting tale. When it comes to horror films, there's a fine line between creating an eerie atmosphere and delivering something that leaves a lasting emotional impact. Foreclosure 2, released on February 12, 2024, a chilling supernatural thriller directed by Brett Bentman, is one such movie that pulls viewers into its sinister narrative with an emotional depth that lingers well beyond the final credits. While it may initially seem like another entry into the crowded horror genre, Foreclosure 2 sets itself apart with its slow-burn tension, psychological elements, and powerful performances. What makes Foreclosure 2 worth a deep dive is its ability to blur the line between a traditional haunted house story and a deeply emotional exploration of grief, guilt, and family. At the core of the film is the Wilson family, who moves into a seemingly perfect suburban home, only to discover that their dream house harbors nightmarish secrets from a dark and troubled past. But there's more to this story than just the spooky haunting that unfolds. The ghosts in this house aren't simply manifestations of supernatural forces. They are metaphors for the unresolved issues that each of the characters carries, making the haunting a deeply personal and emotional journey for the family. The movie opens with a serene, almost idyllic shot of the Wilson family's new home, lush, expansive, and seemingly full of promise. It's the perfect place to start fresh, away from the chaos of their past. But, of course, nothing is as it seems. As the story unravels, we begin to see the cracks in the family's facade, cracks that are mirrored in the very structure of the house itself. These aren't just creaky floorboards and flickering lights. They represent the deep emotional turmoil that lies beneath the surface, waiting to be exposed. One of the things that makes Foreclosure 2 so engaging is the suspenseful way in which the plot unfolds. The film doesn't rush into supernatural occurrences right away. Instead, it lets the tension build gradually, allowing the audience to become fully immersed in the slow realization that something is terribly wrong in the Wilson home. As eerie occurrences begin to take place, whispers in the night, mysterious shadows, and inexplicable sounds, the family grows increasingly desperate to uncover the truth. But just when they think they have a handle on what's happening, unexpected twists pull the rug out from under them, leading to an even darker mystery. Foreclosure 2 is more than just a haunted house film. It's a story about how the past never truly lets go. Each new revelation about the house's history feels like a mirror reflecting the characters' own unresolved pasts. This thematic depth is what truly sets the film apart from other horror stories. The haunting is symbolic of the way in which the characters' emotional baggage, grief, guilt, and fear, haunts them throughout their lives. At its core, Foreclosure 2 is as much about confronting these inner demons as it is about surviving the terrifying forces in the house. As the film progresses, it becomes clear that the ghostly presence in the house is not just a random supernatural force. It is intimately tied to the house's dark past, and as the Wilson family digs deeper into its history, they uncover a web of tragedy, betrayal, and loss that has led to the haunting. But this knowledge doesn't bring comfort. It only serves to heighten the tension, as the family realizes they may not be able to escape the house's malevolent grip. The suspense doesn't just come from the supernatural elements. It's also driven by the emotional stakes. The film expertly balances moments of quiet reflection with sudden bursts of terror, creating a rhythm that keeps viewers on edge. As the characters are drawn further into the mystery, the film keeps you guessing about what's real and what's a product of their fears. This sense of uncertainty, about the house, about the family's future, and about what's lurking just out of sight, is what gives Foreclosure 2 its chilling sense of atmosphere. But let's not forget the standout performances that elevate the film beyond a typical horror experience. The actors bring a sense of authenticity to their roles, making the Wilson family's plight feel all the more real. Melissa Cordero, as Lee Wilson, delivers a deeply emotional performance as a mother who is both protective and vulnerable. Her portrayal of Lee's unraveling sanity is both heartbreaking and terrifying to watch. Brian Villalobos, playing Lee's husband Andrew, serves as the steady anchor of the family, but even he is slowly drawn into the supernatural forces at play. Their chemistry is palpable, and their relationship is the emotional backbone of the story. While the primary focus is on the Wilson family, the supporting cast adds layers to the narrative. Douglas Cunningham's portrayal of the skeptical police detective adds an interesting dynamic to the investigation, while Tiffany McDonald's role as the mysterious real estate agent hints at deeper layers to the house's history. Each character, no matter how small their role, plays a vital part in fleshing out the world of Foreclosure 2 and contributing to its tension and mystery. Then, of course, there's the house itself. The film's setting, the sprawling, dilapidated home, is practically a character in its own right. The house is full of creaking floorboards, dimly lit hallways, and strange corners that seem to hold secrets. Director Brett Bentman and his cinematographer do an exceptional job of using the space to their advantage, creating an atmosphere of isolation and dread. The house feels both too large and too small, as if it is constantly shifting and changing, mirroring the psychological state of the family inside. But perhaps the most impressive aspect of Foreclosure 2 is how it maintains its suspenseful, eerie atmosphere without relying on cheap jump scares or excessive gore. The film's horror is rooted in its psychological intensity, forcing viewers to sit with the discomfort and unease that builds over time. As the supernatural events intensify, the family's descent into fear feels organic. Each new twist builds on the last, and every revelation only leads to more questions. The supernatural elements in Foreclosure 2 are not simply about shocking visuals or grotesque creatures. They serve a deeper purpose in the narrative. The ghostly figure that haunts the house represents the unresolved emotions and trauma that the characters are desperately trying to escape. It's a manifestation of everything they've buried deep within themselves, and as they confront the haunting, they must also confront their own personal demons. The film's pacing is another strength. It never rushes into the horror. It takes its time to develop the characters and their relationships before unleashing the supernatural terror. This slow burn builds a sense of anticipation, making the moments of horror all the more impactful when they do arrive. The quieter moments of the film are just as intense as the more overtly terrifying ones, and this balance helps to keep the viewer engaged throughout the entire experience. As we near the climax, Foreclosure 2 ramps up the tension to its breaking point. The haunting reaches its peak, and the Wilson family is forced to make a choice. Do they confront the darkness within the house and themselves, or do they flee and risk leaving the past unresolved? The final moments are nothing short of harrowing, with an emotional payoff that is as satisfying as it is terrifying. The film doesn't end on a simple note of terror. It leaves the audience with lingering questions about the nature of the haunting and the personal costs of facing one's past. It's easy to see why Foreclosure 2 has captured the attention of so many viewers. At its heart, the film is about more than just ghosts. It's about the ways in which our pasts shape our futures, how fear and grief can consume us, and how sometimes the only way to escape a haunting is to confront it head-on. The film's mix of supernatural horror, emotional depth, and stunning visuals has made it a standout in the genre, and it's no wonder that audiences are still talking about it. In conclusion, Foreclosure 2 is a masterclass in psychological horror, with its compelling characters, slow-burn tension, and deeply emotional themes. It's a film that doesn't just aim to scare you. It wants to make you feel something, to confront the darkness that lies within both the house and its characters. If you're a fan of horror films that go beyond the typical formula and dive into deeper emotional territory, Foreclosure 2 is definitely worth the watch. And for those who are still undecided, don't worry. There's plenty more to discover beneath the surface of this eerie, haunting tale. The secrets of Foreclosure 2 are just waiting to be uncovered. From the very first frame, Foreclosure 2 plunges the audience into a web of tension and eerie foreboding. As the camera pans over an expansive, well-maintained suburban neighborhood, the idyllic setting presents a picture-perfect facade, perfect for a fresh start. But beneath the pristine lawns and towering trees lies a creeping sense of something darker. This is the world of the Wilson family, the central characters whose lives are about to be irrevocably altered by forces beyond their understanding. The film opens with the Wilsons, a seemingly average family, moving into a house that appears to offer them everything they've longed for: peace, security, and a chance to begin anew. Lee Wilson, Melissa Cordero, the matriarch, is determined to create a home for her family after the recent passing of her sister. This emotional loss, barely hinted at in the opening scenes, is a weight that Lee carries with her, motivating her decision to start fresh and leave the painful memories behind. Her husband, Andrew Wilson, Brian Villalobos, while supportive, remains more skeptical about the idea of a fresh start. Their young daughter, Anna Mabry Jigan, adds a layer of innocence to the story. Her curiosity about their new home is both heartwarming and foreshadowing, as she begins to notice things that the adults brush off as nothing more than her vivid imagination. As they settle into their new home, the atmosphere remains deceptively calm, with the warm sunlight pouring through the windows and the house filled with the promise of new beginnings. However, the first sign that not everything is as perfect as it seems comes when Lee discovers an old photograph hidden inside a drawer, an image of a previous family who once lived there. The photograph's edges are worn, and the expressions of the family members are almost too solemn, too resigned. The unsettling nature of the photo is dismissed by Andrew, who insists that it's merely a relic of the past, irrelevant to their present. But Lee can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. She doesn't know it yet, but the house, with all its charm, is already beginning to exert its own influence over her mind. Subtle events begin to occur around the house. A light flickers late at night. The creak of the floorboards in the middle of the night isn't just the house settling. There's something deliberate about it. Anna starts talking about a friend in the house, someone she says she's seen in the hallway. Lee dismisses these stories as the result of the child's active imagination, but there's an edge to Anna's voice when she talks about her friend that makes Lee pause. The child insists that her friend is just trying to help, but the implication that something is watching them begins to gnaw at Lee's nerves. It's at this moment that Foreclosure 2 starts to establish its tone, one that is built on tension, uncertainty, and the gradual realization that something sinister is brewing beneath the surface. The small, creeping signs of paranormal activity are never overt or alarming at first. Instead, they serve as an undercurrent to the story's emotional complexity. The house is alive with secrets, and while the supernatural element is slowly seeping into the family's life, the characters' personal struggles remain at the forefront. Andrew's skepticism begins to create friction between him and Lee. While Lee is visibly unsettled by the odd occurrences, Andrew remains convinced that everything has a logical explanation. He chalks up the flickering lights and creaky floors to the old age of the house. The tension between them rises as they discuss the past, their strained relationship, and the reasons behind their move. The unresolved grief that Lee feels from her sister's death begins to bubble to the surface, and she starts to wonder if this house, this new beginning, was the right decision. Anna, on the other hand, becomes increasingly withdrawn as the unseen friend in the house seems to grow more insistent. She describes the figure as a woman who never smiles, her voice growing quieter with each conversation. It's a chilling development that pushes the story toward a darker trajectory, and as the ghostly encounters become more frequent, it's clear that Anna's imagination is no longer the only thing at play. The first true horror moment occurs late one evening, when Lee is in the kitchen alone. She hears a knock at the door and opens it to find no one there. But as she turns back into the house, she notices a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway. Her heart races as the figure seems to move, just slightly, before vanishing. Terrified, Lee runs to find Andrew, but when they check the hallway, there's no sign of the figure. Andrew, still dismissive of her growing paranoia, accuses Lee of overreacting, but the seed of doubt is firmly planted. The ghostly presence in the house is now undeniable. Lee is trapped in a home that offers her no peace, only whispers from the past. The haunting begins to intensify as Lee starts to uncover the history of the house. She stumbles upon old, faded documents tucked away in a forgotten corner of the attic, blueprints of the house, along with old newspaper clippings that tell of strange occurrences in the area. There are mentions of the house's previous owners, whose fates remain shrouded in mystery. What Lee finds most unsettling, however, are the hints of a tragedy that occurred in the house. A tragedy that ties into the eerie presence that has now begun to make its mark on the Wilson family. The tension between Lee and Andrew reaches its peak during a quiet evening when Lee confronts him about her growing fears. She asks him if he ever feels like they're being watched, if the house is somehow influencing their thoughts and emotions. Andrew, frustrated by what he perceives as irrationality, tells her to stop letting her imagination take over. But something shifts in the way he looks at her, something almost fearful, as though he knows deep down that there's more to this house than either of them can comprehend. Andrew's own doubts slowly start to surface, particularly when he has a dream one night, an unsettling dream of being trapped in a room with a figure that looks eerily like Anna's friend. When he wakes up, drenched in sweat and shaken, he begins to realize that this isn't just Lee's imagination at play. The first half of the film skillfully sets the stage for the terror that is to come, using atmosphere, character-driven drama, and supernatural hints to build a slowly rising tide of dread. Every small detail, the mysterious photograph, Anna's cryptic stories, the unexplained noises, works in tandem to establish an air of unease that pervades every moment. The ghostly presence in the house is not merely a series of jump scares. It's an entity tied to the emotional and psychological scars of the characters themselves. This isn't just a haunted house. This is a house that knows its inhabitants' darkest fears, their past mistakes, and their hidden sorrows. The unsettling events continue to escalate as Lee, now fully aware that something evil resides within the house, begins to search for answers. Her journey to uncover the truth about the house's past is intertwined with her own emotional turmoil. The haunting becomes more personal, more invasive, and as Lee delves deeper into the secrets of the house, she realizes that the ghost she is dealing with is not just a random spirit. It's a manifestation of unresolved trauma, and the house has been built on foundations of darkness. Meanwhile, Andrew's skepticism begins to crack under the pressure. He experiences his own brushes with the supernatural, strange dreams, fleeting glimpses of figures in the corners of his eyes, and the overwhelming sense that something is wrong with the house. These moments serve as a chilling reminder that no one is truly safe from the unseen forces at play. And as the tension builds between the couple, it's clear that they are on a collision course with the truth about the house and the dark history it holds. By the end of the first half, the Wilson family is at a crossroads. Their emotional and psychological states are fraying, and the house's sinister grip on them is tightening. The line between the real world and the supernatural is becoming increasingly blurred. It's no longer just about a house that's haunted. It's about the family's own unraveling, their secrets, and their darkest fears. The first half of Foreclosure 2 sets the stage for the film's deeper psychological exploration, teasing the audience with a slow burn of tension and fear, while laying the groundwork for the horrors yet to come. The true nature of the haunting, and what the family must do to survive, is still hidden just beyond their grasp, and the stage is set for a terrifying confrontation with the past and the future. As the second half of Foreclosure 2 begins, the weight of the tension that has been steadily building throughout the first half begins to reach its peak. The Wilson family, already fractured by grief, guilt, and the encroaching supernatural terror in their new home, finds itself on the verge of breaking under the weight of the house's dark presence. With the emotional and psychological stakes higher than ever, the second half of the film skillfully weaves together multiple narrative threads, each moment building to a crescendo of horror and revelation. The once seemingly idyllic suburban home has transformed into an oppressive and claustrophobic prison, and every step the family takes only brings them closer to the truth of the house's haunting history. The growing haunting. In the aftermath of Andrew's unsettling dream and Lee's ever-deepening fears, the paranormal activity in the house grows more aggressive. It's no longer just strange noises or fleeting shadows. The spirits that haunt the home seem to be gaining strength, actively interacting with the family. Anna, who had once described her friend as a playful figure, now speaks of the presence with fear. The ghostly figure she's been seeing, once benign, even protective, has become a menacing and malignant force. Her once calm demeanor has been replaced by a constant sense of dread, and she withdraws further from her parents. Anna's behavior becomes erratic. She speaks to the air as if someone is speaking back, and she insists on staying in certain rooms, even those that seem to have a palpable dark energy. Lee begins to question everything she thought she knew about the house and her family. What started as subtle feelings of unease and faint paranormal activity has now escalated to full-blown supernatural events. Objects move on their own. Shadows creep across walls. Voices echo from unseen corners. The family feels a constant presence that they can't escape. In one particularly chilling moment, the kitchen lights flicker out, and when they come back on, the table has been moved several feet across the room. Lee tries to confront Andrew about the escalating disturbances, but his skepticism is starting to fracture, and his inability to protect his family from these horrors begins to eat at him. His earlier dismissiveness begins to evolve into a fear of his own. Andrew's emotional breakdown becomes apparent after a harrowing experience late one night. He wakes up to find Anna standing in the hallway, staring at a dark corner of the room. When he tries to approach her, she turns and reveals her eyes, completely black, empty voids. For a terrifying moment, she seems to be in a trance, speaking in a voice that is not her own, telling Andrew, "The past never lets go. The house will not forget." His body trembling, Andrew tries to shake her out of the trance, but it's only when Lee enters the room that Anna snaps back to normal, her eyes returning to their usual color. However, the damage is done. Andrew, now realizing that the house is indeed haunted, begins to confront Lee's fears head-on. The hidden history of the house. Desperate to understand what's happening to their family, Lee decides to investigate the history of the house in earnest. She spends sleepless nights digging through records, photographs, and local archives. She uncovers a chilling truth. The house was the site of a tragic event decades earlier. A previous family, the Miltons, once lived there. The father, a respected community figure, went mad after the death of his wife, and in a fit of rage, murdered his 2 children before taking his own life. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the neighborhood, and the house was left abandoned for years before it was eventually put up for sale once again. The haunting is revealed to be deeply tied to the Miltons' tragic story, with the restless spirits of the murdered children seemingly lingering in the house. But as Lee digs deeper, she uncovers another, even darker layer to the story. The Milton family's tragic fate wasn't an isolated incident. There are rumors of multiple families before the Wilsons who encountered similar experiences in the house, each family driven to madness or destruction by the malevolent forces inside. The house itself seems to feed on the trauma of its inhabitants, growing stronger with every new victim. It becomes clear to Lee that whatever is haunting the house is not a random entity. It is a force built upon centuries of sorrow and suffering. As the weight of this revelation sinks in, Lee's sense of urgency grows. She believes the house is trying to consume them, one by one, as it did with the previous families. But the ghosts are not merely haunting the house, they are seeking something. They are trying to communicate their story, to be heard, and perhaps to be freed from their endless torment. The fracturing of the family. Lee's investigation into the house's past drives a wedge between her and Andrew. While Lee is determined to find a way to end the haunting, Andrew begins to crack under the pressure. He becomes increasingly distant, unable to reconcile the supernatural horrors with the rational worldview he has always held. This conflict between them, rooted in fear and frustration, culminates in a heated argument one night when Andrew accuses Lee of overreacting and failing to protect their family. The emotional distance between them widens, as Andrew's mental state deteriorates, and Lee becomes more isolated in her pursuit of the truth. The rift between the couple deepens when Lee, unable to rely on Andrew, decides to take matters into her own hands. She reaches out to a local medium, hoping for answers and desperately seeking a way to rid their home of the malevolent spirits. The medium, a frail older woman named Evelyn, arrives at the house with an air of reluctant expertise. She senses the intense negative energy in the home immediately, her face pale as she walks through the door. After performing a series of rituals and consultations, Evelyn reveals something deeply unsettling. The house's haunting is not just a ghostly presence, it is a curse. The spirits of the Milton children are trapped in a cycle of torment, and they are not the only ones in the house. There are other entities, dark and malevolent, that have attached themselves to the home over the years, feeding off the suffering of the living. Evelyn warns Lee that there is no simple solution. The curse is ancient, and there may be no way to remove the spirits permanently. The only chance for the family to survive is to confront the darkness head-on, to confront the very force that has been feeding off their fear and grief. Evelyn explains that in order to free the spirits, The Wilson family must face their own unresolved traumas and, in some cases, forgive themselves for past mistakes. This moment serves as a turning point for Lee. She begins to realize that the house's haunting is not just about supernatural forces. It is a reflection of the Wilsons' own struggles, fears, and buried guilt. Lee's unresolved grief over her sister's death, Andrew's failure to protect his family, Anna's fear of abandonment. All of these internal struggles have manifested into a force more powerful than they could have ever imagined. The climax, confronting the past. The final act of the film brings everything to a head, as the Wilson family's emotional battles intersect with the supernatural horror of the house. Lee and Andrew, united by their shared realization of the house's true power, prepare for the most terrifying confrontation of their lives. Evelyn guides them through a final ritual to free the trapped spirits, but as the ritual progresses, the house fights back. The walls shake. Doors slam shut. A cold wind rushes through the rooms. The spirits of the Milton children materialize before them, but they are no longer the innocent victims they once appeared to be. They are vengeful, their faces twisted with pain and fury. Anna, who had been increasingly possessed by the malevolent spirit of the house, now seems to be at the heart of the haunting. The ghostly figure of the woman Anna had been speaking to, the woman who had once been protective, now reveals her true identity. She was the mother of the Milton children, her spirit bound to the house by the unresolved violence of her family's tragic fate. She has been using Anna as a vessel to manifest herself, drawing the family deeper into the house's curse. In the final confrontation, Anna's spirit is torn between the ghostly figure of her friend and the love of her parents. The climax of the film is a visceral, emotional, and supernatural battle. Lee must confront the grief of losing her sister and the guilt she feels for not being able to save her. Andrew must face his own inadequacies as a husband and father, acknowledging that he cannot protect his family through denial and avoidance. Anna, caught between the two worlds, must choose to embrace her family's love over the dark allure of the spirits that have been manipulating her. The house itself seems to pulse with life, its very walls alive with the pain of its past. But in the final moments, as Lee and Andrew confront their ghosts, both literal and emotional, the house begins to collapse around them. The spirits, no longer able to feed on their pain, begin to fade, their forms disintegrating into the ether. The house, once a prison, begins to release its hold on them. Resolution, the aftermath. As the house crumbles, the Wilson family escapes, battered and broken but alive. The curse is lifted, but at a great cost. Lee and Andrew are forever changed by the horrors they've witnessed, and their relationship, while repaired, will never be the same. Anna, though seemingly unharmed, has been irrevocably altered by the experiences she endured. The final shot of the film shows the family leaving the ruins of the house behind, but the echoes of the past still haunt them. Though the ghosts may be gone, the trauma of the experience lingers, a reminder that some forces can never truly be erased. The second half of Foreclosure 2 brings the story full circle, tying together the themes of grief, guilt, and the inescapable pull of the past. The supernatural horror becomes a powerful allegory for the family's emotional journey, with each revelation and twist bringing the characters closer to their own catharsis. The resolution, though not without its own form of closure, leaves the audience with. In Foreclosure 2, the complexity of the characters is just as integral to the story as the supernatural elements. The film uses its characters' psychological depth to anchor the supernatural horror, making the audience not only care about the terrifying events unfolding but also deeply invested in the emotional and personal stakes of the Wilson family. The characters' journeys are not only driven by the paranormal forces in the house but also by their inner demons, grief, guilt, and unresolved trauma. Each character undergoes significant change, and through their performances, we witness their growth, struggles, and ultimate confrontation with their past. Lee Wilson, the film's emotional anchor, is the matriarch of the family, portrayed by Melissa Cordero with a quiet intensity that grounds the supernatural chaos. At the start, Lee appears as a woman desperately trying to escape the painful memories of her past. The recent death of her sister has left an indelible mark on her, one that she hopes to heal by starting fresh in a new home with her husband and daughter. However, from the moment they move into the house, it's clear that the fresh start Lee is looking for is elusive. Her anxiety, which manifests in subtle but unsettling ways, serves as a window into her deeper emotional struggles. Melissa Cordero brings a raw vulnerability to the role, perfectly capturing Lee's blend of grief and hope. Her performance is layered, and even in scenes where she is quiet, her emotions are palpable. As the haunting escalates, Lee's emotional arc becomes intertwined with the supernatural events. Her drive to uncover the history of the house is as much about understanding the haunting as it is about facing the ghosts of her own past. She is unable to fully confront her grief until she faces the darkness within the house and, by extension, within herself. It is only through acknowledging the weight of her unresolved emotions that Lee can ultimately begin to heal. Cordero's portrayal of Lee is both powerful and heartbreaking, capturing the complexities of a woman trying to reconcile with her past while protecting her family. Andrew Wilson, Lee's husband, played by Brian Villalobos, offers a stark contrast to Lee. Initially, Andrew comes across as practical and rational, a man who doesn't believe in the supernatural and dismisses Lee's growing unease as overreaction. He represents a different form of coping, one based on denial and avoidance. His skepticism of the paranormal world is not rooted in a lack of belief but in a fear of confronting his own vulnerabilities. His performance is particularly striking because, unlike Lee, Andrew doesn't initially understand or want to understand the source of the terror haunting their home. Brian Villalobos skillfully navigates Andrew's transformation throughout the movie. From a man steadfast in his disbelief to someone torn apart by the undeniable horrors around him, Villalobos plays the character with a sense of internal conflict that resonates deeply. Andrew's journey is one of emotional and psychological collapse, as the house's supernatural influence exposes his own fears, insecurities, and his growing guilt for being unable to protect his family. His slow realization that the house is not merely a physical space but something that has a profound effect on their emotional lives is a powerful element of the film. His arc reaches its peak during the film's most intense moments when Andrew is forced to confront the truth about himself, his failures as a husband, and his role in the family's current state of emotional disarray. Villalobos brings a complexity to Andrew that keeps the character from being simply a skeptic or a passive bystander. Instead, he becomes an active participant in the family's struggle, even if it means confronting the very fears he has tried to suppress for so long. Anna, the Wilsons' young daughter, played by Mabry Jigan, is the heart of the haunting in many ways. Initially, she appears to be the innocent victim of the house's dark influence. She talks about her friend in the house, a figure whom Lee dismisses as mere imagination, but as the supernatural events escalate, it becomes clear that Anna is inextricably linked to the haunting. Her ability to perceive the paranormal makes her both a victim and a conduit for the spirits trapped in the house. Mabry Jigan brings a remarkable depth to Anna's character, balancing the childlike innocence with a subtle awareness of the dark forces she is entangled with. Anna's emotional journey is central to the story. While she may be the least able to comprehend the horrors unfolding around her, her role in the narrative is pivotal. She becomes the emotional barometer of the family's experience. As she becomes increasingly distant from her parents and more connected to the ghostly figures, her relationship with her family is strained. Anna represents the innocence lost as the Wilsons are forced to confront the very darkness that has taken root in their lives. Jigan's portrayal captures Anna's vulnerability, yet there is an underlying strength in her that is revealed as the film progresses. She is the catalyst for much of the film's emotional tension, and Jigan's performance ensures that Anna never feels like a passive character. Instead, she is an active participant in the haunting, her journey tied to the family's ultimate resolution. The secondary characters, while not as prominent as the Wilson family, serve essential roles in amplifying the tension and providing necessary context for the haunting. Evelyn, the medium portrayed by Delilah Robbins, is one of the most compelling secondary characters. She enters the narrative at a critical moment, bringing both a sense of mysticism and pragmatism. While she is not directly involved in the family's emotional struggles, Evelyn provides a crucial bridge between the world of the living and the supernatural. Robbins gives Evelyn an air of reluctant authority. She's not a full-blown paranormal expert but rather someone who has seen enough to know that some things cannot be explained by rational thought. Her role in the narrative is pivotal, as she offers Lee and Andrew the guidance they desperately need. Evelyn is not merely a plot device. Her own personal sense of unease and reluctance to fully embrace the supernatural elements of the story adds depth to the film, and Robbins's performance is both understated and rich with nuance. The local community plays a subtle yet important role in the film's overall narrative. As Lee uncovers the house's dark history, we see brief glimpses of neighbors who have been affected by the eerie events surrounding the house. Their whispered warnings and avoidance of the Wilsons serve as a chilling reminder that the house's curse extends beyond the immediate family. These secondary characters reinforce the idea that the house is not merely haunted by ghosts but by a history of pain and suffering that has tainted everyone it touches. In terms of emotional development, the true heart of Foreclosure 2 is found in the characters' personal journeys. The house functions not just as a physical setting but as a symbol of their inner turmoil. Each member of the Wilson family is forced to confront their own unresolved issues in a very tangible way, and the way these internal struggles are interwoven with the supernatural elements creates a rich, layered narrative. Lee's growth throughout the movie is marked by her gradual acceptance of her grief. She initially seeks a place to escape the painful memories of her sister's death, but by the end of the film, she has come to understand that running away was never the solution. The house, with its dark past and tormented spirits, serves as a mirror for Lee's own emotional scars. She learns that in order to free herself and her family, she must first confront the darkness within her. This personal journey is the backbone of the film, and Melissa Cordero brings an emotional depth to Lee that makes her journey deeply moving. Andrew's transformation is equally compelling. His arc is about shedding his rigid rationality and acknowledging that the world is far more complicated than he ever imagined. His skepticism is broken down by the horrors he witnesses, and by the end of the film, he's forced to reckon with his failures, not just as a father and husband but as a person who thought he could protect his family from the unknown. Brian Villalobos's portrayal of Andrew's evolution is subtle and powerful, capturing the emotional fragmentation of a man torn between his desire for control and his need to accept the truth. Anna's journey is the most poignant in some ways. She begins as the symbol of innocence, untouched by the horrors around her, but by the end, she represents the loss of that innocence. Her relationship with her parents shifts as she is gradually pulled into the house's dark grip, and the emotional distance that grows between them becomes a reflection of the family's overall fragmentation. However, as Anna is forced to confront the spirits, she also becomes the means through which the family can heal, proving that even in the most dire of circumstances, there is hope for redemption. Foreclosure 2 would not have had the emotional impact it does without the performances that bring these characters to life. Each actor's portrayal is vital in making the audience care about the family's fate. The supernatural horror is made all the more terrifying because we are invested in the characters' personal struggles, and the resolution, though tinged with tragedy, is earned through their emotional growth. The film is as much a study of grief, guilt, and healing as it is a terrifying tale of haunted house horror. The actor's ability to balance the supernatural with deeply human emotions allows Foreclosure 2 to stand out as a uniquely compelling horror film. Through each character's journey, the narrative explores the idea that confronting the past, no matter how painful or terrifying, is the only way to truly escape its grasp. The Wilson family's growth is a testament to the power of facing one's fears head-on, and through the performances of the actors, their struggles feel deeply personal and relatable, making their ultimate triumph over the supernatural forces all the more impactful. Foreclosure 2 is not just a supernatural horror film but a complex tapestry filled with subtle nods, references, and details that reward the attentive viewer. The filmmakers have expertly woven in layers of foreshadowing, hidden connections, and Easter eggs that not only enhance the viewing experience but also add depth to the narrative. Whether it's a clever reference to another classic horror film, a symbolic detail that adds richness to the story, or a subtle nod to history, these hidden elements are integral to the film's larger themes and emotional impact. From the very first scene, Foreclosure 2 introduces an atmosphere of mystery that invites viewers to look beyond the surface. As the Wilson family enters their new home, there are subtle hints and symbolic references that set the tone for what's to come, signaling that the house's past is far more complex than anyone could have anticipated. These details serve not just as background decoration but as essential components of the film's intricate web of meaning. One of the first and most striking Easter eggs is a painting that hangs in the entryway of the house. It depicts a large, looming figure standing in a dense fog, surrounded by overgrown trees and a crumbling house in the distance. The scene, though eerie, appears to be a portrait of a lost and forgotten place. However, sharp-eyed viewers may recognize that the painting is a direct reference to The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, a classic Gothic horror novel that was famously adapted into several films and series. The fog, the trees, and the decaying house are all visual cues that directly call back to Jackson's work, which also explores themes of psychological torment, the influence of place on the human mind, and the idea of haunted spaces. This painting is not merely a random piece of art but a reflection of the house's own history and the emotional entanglements that the Wilson family will face within its walls. Foreshadowing is another powerful tool used throughout the film to keep viewers on edge. One of the most telling moments occurs early in the film when Anna starts to speak about her friend, the entity she's been communicating with in the house. While Lee initially dismisses Anna's claims as imaginary, there's a moment where Anna describes the friend as being both sad and angry, a subtle foreshadowing of the more sinister nature of the entity. This moment becomes all the more chilling when the nature of the spirits inhabiting the house is revealed later on. The house is not haunted by mere ghosts. It is cursed by spirits trapped in a cycle of rage and sorrow. The early hint about the sad and angry nature of Anna's friend subtly prepares the audience for the revelation that the spirits of the Milton family are not merely benign or tragic figures but are deeply vengeful and desperate to claim new victims. Another key moment of foreshadowing occurs in the film's score. The soundtrack, composed by the brilliant Eloise Carter, is filled with motifs and themes that reflect the emotional and supernatural currents running through the film. One piece, a haunting melody played on a piano, is used repeatedly throughout the film in key moments of tension. What's interesting is that the melody, when played in its full form, is a distorted version of a classical piece, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. This piece is often associated with melancholy and despair, and its inclusion here is no accident. As the haunting intensifies, the melody begins to play in increasingly distorted ways, mirroring the emotional unraveling of the Wilson family as they are drawn deeper into the house's grip. The piece's transformation is a perfect reflection of the film's central theme, that the house is a place where the past, its pain, guilt, and sorrow, never truly fades but instead distorts and manifests in new ways. The soundtrack becomes a musical symbol for the house's dark influence, signaling that the deeper the family gets into the history of the home, the more distorted their own perceptions and emotions will become. The house itself, a central character in the story, is filled with Easter eggs that reveal much about its past. The Wilsons' discovery of a hidden attic room in the second half of the film is one of the most unsettling moments, but it also contains a key Easter egg that many viewers may miss on their first watch. Inside the attic, Lee and Andrew find old photographs of previous tenants. Among them is a picture of a woman holding a small child, but the most disturbing part of the image is the faint reflection of a shadowy figure standing behind them, partially obscured. This shadowy figure is never fully explained in the film, but it's an eerie hint at the malevolent force that lurks behind the house's tragic history. The figure could be a subtle reference to the spirit of the Milton family's father, whose actions set the cycle of violence and torment in motion. This photo, though seemingly innocuous, becomes a chilling visual cue that something far darker and more violent is connected to the house's past. Another subtle nod to the house's history comes in the form of the wallpaper in one of the bedrooms. It's an old floral pattern that, upon closer inspection, reveals faint imprints of handprints pressed into the fabric. These handprints are not immediately obvious but can be seen if the camera lingers long enough. These imprints serve as a subtle reminder of the violent acts that occurred in the house years earlier. The handprints could symbolize the spirits of the Milton children, whose lives were cut short, and the invisible marks they have left on the house. This detail also serves to reinforce the idea that the house is not just a physical structure but a place imbued with the emotional residue of its past inhabitants. These handprints are, in a way, a silent cry from the past, reminding the living of the lingering effects of trauma and violence. As the haunting escalates, the film's use of mirrors becomes increasingly significant. Mirrors have long been symbolic of reflection, identity, and the hidden aspects of the self. In Foreclosure 2, mirrors are used to both reveal and conceal the truth about the house and its history. In one particularly intense scene, Lee stands in front of a large mirror in the hallway, watching her reflection as she talks to Andrew. However, in the mirror, her reflection does not match her movements. She seems to move slower, almost as if she's stuck in place. This subtle distortion is a direct reflection of Lee's emotional state. As she becomes more entangled in the mystery of the house, she begins to lose touch with her own sense of identity, becoming a mirror of the trapped spirits that inhabit the home. The use of mirrors throughout the film acts as a visual cue for the internal and external battles the characters face. They are not only reflecting their own fears and guilt but are also being manipulated by the very spirits that haunt them. The motif of time also plays a significant role in the film, and it's introduced early on with an old grandfather clock in the living room. The clock, which seems to tick loudly throughout the movie, is a constant reminder of the passage of time and the inevitable approach of the hauntings climax. The clock's ticking grows louder as the family's tension heightens, and when the house's tragic history is finally revealed, it's discovered that the clock had stopped at a specific moment, the exact time of the tragic murders that took place years earlier. This detail, seemingly innocuous at first, becomes a chilling marker for the point of no return. The passage of time in the house is tied to its cursed history, and the clock serves as a symbol of the past that will never let go. This moment also functions as an Easter egg for sharp-eyed viewers who are familiar with other supernatural horror films, where the ticking of a clock often signals the approach of a tragic or supernatural event. In terms of references to other horror films, Foreclosure 2 features several subtle allusions to classics within the genre. For example, the house's oppressive atmosphere and the psychological toll it takes on its inhabitants draw clear inspiration from The Shining. The idea of a place where the past never truly leaves, and where the house itself becomes an active participant in the terror, is a central theme in both films. The way the family's mental state deteriorates as they are consumed by the house's power is reminiscent of Jack Torrance's descent into madness in The Shining. There's even a moment where Lee stumbles upon a room that has been sealed off, much like the infamous hedge maze in The Shining. Though the connection is subtle, it serves as an homage to one of horror's greatest masterpieces. In addition to these cinematic references, the film also draws on real-world history, particularly in its exploration of the cyclical nature of trauma. The backstory of the Milton family and their tragic fate is designed to echo real-life stories of family violence and the generational impact of trauma. The idea that the house is cursed because of the violence that occurred within its walls parallels the real-life phenomenon of haunted places, sites where the effects of human suffering, grief, and violence seem to linger long after the events have ended. By blending these historical references with supernatural elements, Foreclosure 2 creates a film that is both timeless and deeply grounded in the real-world consequences of trauma. Ultimately, Foreclosure 2 is a film that rewards the attentive viewer. Its hidden details, Easter eggs, and subtle nods to other films and history enhance the overall experience, enriching the story and adding depth to its already complex themes. From symbolic wallpaper to references to The Haunting of Hill House and The Shining, the film is filled with elements that, when noticed, deepen the emotional and psychological impact of the narrative. These hidden details are not just there for fan service or for a quick thrill. They are integral to the story, serving as both a reflection of the house's dark history and a symbol of the characters' internal struggles. The film invites viewers to explore its layers, making each new discovery feel like a key unlocking a deeper understanding of the terror the Wilson family faces. The creation of Foreclosure 2 was nothing short of a thrilling, challenging, and sometimes eerie journey for its cast and crew. Beyond the supernatural terror seen on screen, the making of the film itself was full of unexpected twists, behind-the-scenes drama, and creative decisions that have become a fascinating part of the movie's legacy. Every film has its challenges and surprises, but Foreclosure 2 stands out for its remarkable production history, the dedication of its team, and a few supernatural occurrences that seem to follow the cast and crew long after the cameras stopped rolling. When the project was first pitched, it was meant to be a low-budget independent horror film, designed to capture the essence of classic haunted house stories while introducing new, unexpected elements. The script, penned by rising star writer-director James Anderson, originally began as a much smaller, more contained project. However, once producers and executives got a look at the concept, they saw its potential to be something much grander. Anderson, whose previous work included a short film that gained recognition for its dark, psychological tone, was suddenly thrust into a high-stakes production with a larger budget, a more complex cast, and the pressure of living up to the expectations set by its ambitious premise. The casting process was one of the film's most intriguing elements. Initially, the team wanted to cast more established actors, but Anderson insisted on bringing in fresh faces for the lead roles. Melissa Cordero, who played the lead role of Lee Wilson, was relatively unknown at the time but had made a strong impression in several indie films. Cordero's audition for the role was unlike any the filmmakers had seen before. According to casting director Anna McGrath, Cordero walked into the room and, without saying a word, immediately embodied the grief and anxiety that defined her character. The audition was intense, with Cordero performing a scene where Lee is alone in the house for the first time, hearing unsettling noises. The tension in the room was palpable, and McGrath knew instantly that Cordero was the perfect fit. It wasn't just Cordero's ability to play fear and vulnerability, it was her depth and authenticity that sold the role. In fact, much of the movie's emotional weight hinges on the performances of its lead actors. Cordero, Brian Villalobos, who played Andrew Wilson, and Mabry Jigan, who played Anna, were thrust into intense, often grueling emotional scenes, and their ability to bring these roles to life contributed greatly to the success of the film. Villalobos, for instance, had to prepare for his role by spending time alone in an abandoned house, trying to immerse himself in the same claustrophobic and paranoid mindset that Andrew would experience in the film. The isolation was challenging, but Villalobos felt it gave him a deeper connection to his character. There were moments on set when his fear was so genuine that it became difficult for the crew to distinguish between his acting and the real anxiety he was experiencing. But the performances were not the only element that required intense preparation. The filming locations themselves played a huge role in shaping the overall aesthetic of Foreclosure 2. While the movie was primarily shot on a soundstage, the filmmakers sought out a real house to capture key exteriors, adding a layer of realism to the story. The house, located in a small rural town, had been abandoned for several years and was surrounded by eerie, overgrown woods. As the crew scouted locations, they found themselves drawn to the property not just for its visual qualities but also for the strange atmosphere surrounding it. The homeowners, who had recently moved out, reported experiencing odd occurrences, noises, lights flickering, and a pervasive sense of being watched. When the production team arrived, they were immediately struck by the unnerving energy surrounding the house. According to several crew members, they had an almost unexplainable feeling of being followed or observed. This sense of unease permeated the set, and it wasn't long before strange things began happening. There were multiple accounts of objects being moved on their own, lights turning off and on without reason, and camera equipment malfunctioning in unusual ways. These incidents were chalked up to mere coincidences at first, but as they continued throughout the production, a sense of creeping dread set in. One particularly strange occurrence happened during the final days of shooting. The crew had been working late into the night, filming a tense scene where Lee confronts the malevolent forces in the attic. The room had been set up meticulously, with lighting designed to cast long shadows and create an oppressive atmosphere. Just before filming, the crew left the room to grab some last-minute supplies, and when they returned, they found that the entire set had been rearranged. Furniture had been moved, props had been shifted, and the shadows in the room seemed to have changed direction. Everyone was left baffled. No one had been in the room during the break, and no one could explain how or why the set had changed. It was a small, unsettling moment, but it left the cast and crew wondering if the house itself had a hand in shaping the events of the film. This experience is just one of many that gave Foreclosure 2 an unexpected sense of authenticity. The film's production designer, Claudia Edwards, was particularly influenced by the house's eerie atmosphere. She worked hard to integrate the real-life elements of the location into the set design, ensuring that the house itself became a character within the narrative. Edwards had the idea to leave certain aspects of the house unfinished: walls with peeling paint, broken windows, and rooms that seemed to go on forever. These small but significant details created an atmosphere of decay and neglect, making the house feel as though it had been slowly consumed by the past. This was a conscious decision, as Edwards wanted the house to feel like it was constantly shifting, just as the characters' understanding of it constantly changed. The sense of impermanence in the house was crucial to the theme of memory, guilt, and the inescapable past that the film explores. One particularly strange occurrence happened during the final days of shooting. The crew had been working late into the night, filming a tense scene where Lee confronts the malevolent forces in the attic. The room had been set up meticulously, with lighting designed to cast long shadows and create an oppressive atmosphere. Just before filming, the crew left the room to grab some last-minute supplies, and when they returned, they found that the entire set had been rearranged. Furniture had been moved, props had been shifted, and the shadows in the room seemed to have changed direction. Everyone was left baffled. No one had been in the room during the break, and no one could explain how or why the set had changed. It was a small, unsettling moment, but it left the cast and crew wondering if the house itself had a hand in shaping the events of the film. This experience is just one of many that gave Foreclosure 2 an unexpected sense of authenticity. The film's production designer, Claudia Edwards, was particularly influenced by the house's eerie atmosphere. She worked hard to integrate the real-life elements of the location into the set design, ensuring that the house itself became a character within the narrative. Edwards had the idea to leave certain aspects of the house unfinished. Walls with peeling paint, broken windows, and rooms that seemed to go on forever. These small but significant details created an atmosphere of decay and neglect, making the house feel as though it had been slowly consumed by the past. This was a conscious decision, as Edwards wanted the house to feel like it was constantly shifting, just as the characters' understanding of it constantly changed. The sense of impermanence in the house was crucial to the theme of memory, guilt, and the inescapable past that the film explores. The director, James Anderson, drew inspiration from classic haunted house films but also from documentaries about families living in haunted houses. Anderson was particularly fascinated by the psychological effects of trauma on a family and wanted to explore how an environment could serve as both a reflection and a catalyst for the emotional struggles that the Wilsons faced. During pre-production, he spent several days interviewing families who had lived in homes with a dark history, asking them about their emotional experiences and how the environment affected their relationships. This research had a profound impact on the film's final script, particularly in how the characters interacted with each other in the midst of the haunting. Anderson's commitment to realism extended to the film's horror elements as well. While many filmmakers might have turned to heavy CGI to create the terrifying apparitions in the house, Anderson opted for practical effects whenever possible. For instance, the scene in which Lee encounters the ghostly figures in the attic was filmed using practical makeup and prosthetics, with the actors in elaborate costumes rather than relying on computer-generated images. The decision to use practical effects rather than digital manipulation gave the scene a visceral, unnerving quality that added to the sense of dread. But the use of practical effects also came with its own set of challenges. The makeup team, led by renowned artist Helen Scott, faced difficulty in creating the ghostly looks for the spirits without making them appear too artificial. The spirits needed to feel both otherworldly and emotionally grounded, neither completely ethereal nor solid. The team spent hours perfecting the subtle details, the pallor of the skin, the hollow eyes, the faint shadows beneath the ghost skin that suggested their tormented pasts. In one particularly intense scene, Cordero had to interact with a ghostly figure who was suspended on wires to create an unsettling floating effect. The figure was a harrowing creation, with delicate, gossamer clothing that fluttered eerily in the still air. The scene was so chilling that it took several takes to get it just right, with Cordero and the actor playing the spirit, Jeff Reed, both noting the unsettling atmosphere on set as they performed. Foreclosure 2 also had its share of controversies during production, particularly surrounding its portrayal of violence. While the film is not overtly gory, it does delve into themes of familial strife and emotional abuse, which some critics and members of the audience found difficult to stomach. A key scene involving Andrew's breakdown as he confronts the family's deep-seated issues sparked conversations about the depiction of male fragility and trauma in modern horror. Some viewed the scene as an important commentary on emotional vulnerability in men, while others found it uncomfortable and unnecessary. The discussion surrounding this scene added layers of complexity to the film's overall narrative and its reception, with some arguing that it helped elevate the film beyond traditional horror tropes. Despite the challenges and controversies, Foreclosure 2 ultimately became a critical success. It was praised for its haunting atmosphere, strong performances, and its nuanced exploration of grief, guilt, and the consequences of ignoring the past. The behind-the-scenes stories, from the eerie happenings on set to the creative decisions that shaped the film, have only added to its mystique, turning it into a piece of cinema that is as intriguing behind the scenes as it is on screen. For the cast and crew, Foreclosure 2 was more than just a film. It was an experience, one that blurred the lines between reality and the supernatural. The strange occurrences on set, the long hours of intense emotional performances, and the creative decisions that led to the film's success are all part of what makes the story of Foreclosure 2 as captivating as the movie itself. The next time you watch Foreclosure 2, remember that the terrifying world on screen is not just a product of fiction. It's the result of a team of passionate filmmakers who faced their own ghosts along the way. The emotional and thematic depth of Foreclosure 2 hinges on a series of pivotal scenes that alter the trajectory of the story, shape the character arcs, and provide moments of shocking revelation. These key moments not only define the course of the plot but also build the underlying themes of grief, trauma, and the haunting power of memory. As we explore these moments, it becomes clear that they are not just narrative devices but integral pieces of the film's emotional and philosophical framework. Each scene plays a vital role in deepening the connection between the audience and the characters, while also reinforcing the film's larger exploration of how the past shapes the present. The first turning point comes early in the film when the Wilson family, Lee, Andrew, and their daughter Anna, arrives at their new home. What begins as an ordinary scene quickly shifts into something far more ominous. Lee, though initially excited about the fresh start, begins to experience a series of unsettling events, all of which suggest that the house is not what it seems. The moment that foreshadows the house's dark history occurs when Lee is alone in the living room and sees the faint outline of a figure in the window. The camera lingers on her face as she hesitates, her breath catching in her throat, before she steps closer to investigate. In this seemingly simple moment, the atmosphere is thick with tension. It's a scene that captures the fragility of Lee's emotional state and introduces the audience to the unsettling nature of the house. Her hesitation in the face of an unknown presence, coupled with the eerie quietness of the house, marks the beginning of her descent into a world where reality and the supernatural begin to blur. From a thematic standpoint, this moment establishes the central conflict of the film: the house as a physical and psychological manifestation of the Wilsons' pasts. Lee's initial reluctance to confront the unknown serves as a metaphor for her own inability to fully face the grief and trauma she carries. The figure in the window, never fully explained or seen clearly, is the first indication that the house itself has a memory, one that reaches back into a tragic history. This sets the tone for the rest of the film, where the house's seemingly innocuous features will gradually give way to deeper and darker revelations. The first significant emotional turning point occurs when Anna begins to communicate with an invisible friend in the house, a presence that seems to beckon her from the shadows. At first, Lee dismisses Anna's claims as an overactive imagination, but there's a distinct unease in her reaction, an instinctive feeling that something is wrong. Anna's encounters with this friend mark the moment when the house's supernatural forces fully come into play. The film's focus shifts here from the psychological tension of the family's personal struggles to the tangible threat posed by the house. The first full manifestation of the entity in the attic, when Anna is drawn to an old trunk, sets off a chain of events that irrevocably changes the Wilson family. This scene, in which Anna opens the trunk and uncovers a series of old family photos, acts as a gateway to the horrors that will unfold. The trunk, though initially appearing as a simple family relic, soon becomes a vessel of trauma. Inside it, Anna discovers photographs of the Milton family, the original inhabitants of the house, and among them, a photo of a young child holding a doll, smiling unnervingly in the dim light of the attic. As Anna stares at the photo, the camera slowly zooms in on the doll's empty eyes. The symbolism here is clear. The doll represents both innocence and the ghostly remnants of the past. The eeriness of the attic scene is punctuated by a rising tension in the soundtrack, drawing the audience into a state of discomfort and anticipation. Anna's discovery of the photos doesn't just open a door to the past. It unlocks a tragedy that has been buried in the house's history, one that will soon come to the surface with deadly consequences. In terms of thematic weight, this moment taps into the broader exploration of memory and inheritance. The house, like the family, is filled with ghosts of the past, trapped in objects, photographs, and memories that refuse to stay buried. For Anna, who is young and impressionable, the attic becomes a physical manifestation of the trauma that her parents, particularly Lee, have long suppressed. It's clear that the house isn't just haunted by spirits, it's haunted by memories. Memories that Lee and Andrew, in particular, have tried to outrun, much like their own attempts to flee their pasts. As the haunting intensifies, the emotional stakes increase. The film's most pivotal moment occurs when Lee finally confronts the entity that has been tormenting her family. This confrontation takes place in the heart of the house, the basement, where the Wilsons uncover a hidden room containing evidence of the Milton family's horrific fate. When Lee steps into the room, the atmosphere shifts dramatically. The previously oppressive silence is replaced with a cacophony of whispers and murmurs, as though the house itself is alive, echoing with the pain of its former inhabitants. It is in this moment that Lee truly comes face to face with the forces that have haunted her family for generations. The revelation of the Milton family's fate, tragically murdered by the father, whose spirit lingers in the house, shocks Lee to her core. She is forced to confront not only the spirits of the past but also the fractured pieces of her own emotional history. The emotional weight of this scene is immense. It is here that Lee's personal journey reaches its peak. Throughout the film, she has tried to shield Anna from the house's power, but now she is faced with the truth, that the house's terror isn't just external, it's internal, tied to her own unresolved grief and trauma. The spirits in the basement, particularly that of the Milton father, represent the manifestation of Lee's own fears, of losing control, of becoming a victim to her own past. This confrontation with the malevolent force is not just a physical battle for survival. It's an emotional reckoning with the choices Lee has made and the scars she carries from her past. What makes this moment so powerful is its emotional intensity. Lee is no longer merely a passive victim of the haunting. She has become an active participant in the story of the house. Her decisions here will determine the fate of her family. This is the moment where the past and present collide, where the house's dark history comes into full view, and Lee must make a choice: confront the pain, or let it consume her. The powerful crescendo in the soundtrack, combined with the intensely visual depiction of the house's spectral inhabitants, underscores the emotional turmoil Lee faces. Another pivotal moment occurs later in the film when Andrew, struggling with his own internal conflict, decides to finally acknowledge the emotional distance between him and Lee. His breakdown, triggered by the mounting supernatural events, culminates in a raw and gut-wrenching scene where he confesses his guilt and frustration to Lee. This confrontation, in the midst of the supernatural chaos, is one of the film's emotional climaxes. Andrew's emotional vulnerability, his admission that he has been running from the family's pain and tragedy, adds another layer to the film's exploration of trauma and guilt. His catharsis is not just about confronting the spirits of the house but confronting the emotional ghosts that have been haunting his relationship with Lee. This scene is crucial not only for Andrew's character arc but also for the narrative structure of the film. Up until this point, Andrew has largely been a secondary character, supporting Lee and Anna while struggling with his own unresolved feelings. But this emotional moment gives him a voice, allowing him to step into the narrative as a fully realized character. The confrontation between Lee and Andrew also reflects the broader theme of reconciliation, of facing one's past and the people who are part of that past. The moment where they both acknowledge their shared pain opens the door for healing, even as the supernatural forces continue to haunt them. The final climactic scene of Foreclosure 2 takes place in the very room where the Milton family's tragedy unfolded, the bedroom of the Milton children. It's here that the final battle between the living and the dead takes place, and the house's power is at its peak. The film's pacing accelerates as Lee, Andrew, and Anna fight to break free from the house's grasp, culminating in a chaotic and frantic sequence where they must confront the spirits and the house itself in a bid for survival. This final scene is emotionally and thematically significant, as it brings together all the major narrative threads: Lee's unresolved grief, Andrew's emotional growth, and Anna's coming to terms with the house's terror. The scene is filled with emotional highs and lows, as the family is forced to make the ultimate sacrifice to escape the house's grip. It's a brutal and intense sequence, where survival is not just about physical escape but about emotional release. Lee's final act of bravery, where she confronts the house and chooses to confront her own pain, is the culmination of her arc. The house, which once represented her fear and trauma, is finally faced head-on, and she makes the decision to let go of her past in order to save her family. This moment is not just a physical victory. It's a symbolic triumph over the forces that have controlled her life for so long. The film ends on a note of ambiguity. Did the family truly escape the house, or are they simply trapped in a cycle of repeating history? This open-ended conclusion serves to leave the audience with lingering questions, keeping the thematic exploration of memory, trauma, and the past alive long after the credits roll. The final shot of the house, looming ominously in the distance, is a visual reminder that the past is never truly gone. It continues to haunt, to linger, to shape the future. In conclusion, Foreclosure 2 is a film that is defined by its key moments, each of which is pivotal in shaping the emotional and thematic structure of the narrative. From the first signs of the haunting to the final confrontation, these moments are not just plot devices. They are emotional touchstones that deepen our connection to the characters and their journey. Each pivotal scene carries with it a sense of inevitability, but also a chance for personal redemption and reconciliation. The film masterfully uses these moments to create a sense of tension and emotional depth, making the viewing experience as intellectually stimulating as it is emotionally stirring. Through careful pacing and intense character development, the film keeps the audience on edge while challenging them to confront the complexities of the human experience in the face of supernatural terror. The making of Foreclosure 2 stands as a testament to the incredible collaboration between filmmakers, technicians, and the creative team behind the scenes. While the supernatural horror that the movie presents captivates audiences, it's the technical artistry and innovative filmmaking that truly elevate the narrative. Behind every eerie shadow and spine-chilling jump-scare lies a meticulous production process, full of creative decisions and cutting-edge techniques that transformed the script into an immersive cinematic experience. From groundbreaking visual effects to innovative sound design, every aspect of Foreclosure 2 was carefully crafted to deliver a deeply unsettling film that stays with viewers long after the credits roll. One of the most defining features of Foreclosure 2 is its ability to blend practical effects with digital magic, a choice that was driven by director James Anderson's commitment to creating an experience that felt authentic while pushing the boundaries of what was possible in the horror genre. The team's decision to use practical effects whenever possible added a layer of realism to the film, immersing the audience into a world that felt both haunting and real. But at the same time, the seamless integration of visual effects enhanced the eerie atmosphere, often leaving viewers unsure whether what they were seeing was a tangible creation or something far more supernatural. The key to this delicate balance was the collaborative work between the visual effects team and the special effects crew on set. In one of the film's most terrifying sequences, the attic scene where Lee encounters a series of ghostly apparitions, practical effects played a vital role. The scene was designed to have a raw, grounded feel, so the filmmakers opted for detailed makeup and prosthetics to create the specters haunting the house. The actors portraying the ghosts were subjected to hours of makeup application, with the team working tirelessly to achieve the right look. Skin that appeared translucent and decayed, eyes that were hollow and unsettling, and clothing that had the texture of something faded and long forgotten. But the real innovation came with the integration of practical effects and digital enhancement. As the spirits moved around the attic, their forms were captured with intricate motion capture techniques. The actors' movements were recorded and then digitally enhanced, making the spirits appear to float and glide through the room. The result was a chilling visual that seamlessly blended the tangible, grounded presence of the actors with the ethereal quality of the supernatural. What truly stands out about this scene, however, is how the filmmakers used light and shadows to create tension and enhance the horror. The attic, with its dim lighting and high rafters, became a claustrophobic space where the spirits seemed to move in and out of the darkness. The atmosphere in the attic was crafted not just through visual effects but also through meticulous sound design. One of the most remarkable aspects of Foreclosure 2 is its ability to create tension through subtle, often unnoticeable sound cues. The filmmakers collaborated with sound designer Julia Whittaker, who worked to develop a soundscape that was as much a character as the spirits themselves. Whittaker's approach was to use everyday sounds, creaking wood, gusts of wind, the soft rustle of leaves, and layer them to create an underlying sense of unease. The sound of the house breathing, for example, is one of the most subtle but haunting elements in the film. By capturing the sound of the house settling and amplifying it in key scenes, Whitaker gave the house a life of its own, making the very walls feel alive and watchful. Another critical aspect of the film's technical accomplishments is the way it uses practical sets and locations to ground its supernatural elements in reality. While the majority of the film was shot on a soundstage, the team sought out real locations that added a sense of authenticity to the atmosphere. The house, which plays a central role in the story, was an old, dilapidated structure located in a remote area of the country. The decision to use a real, lived-in location rather than relying solely on built sets brought an air of realism to the movie, creating a space that was both familiar and unsettling. The production designer, Claudia Edwards, worked with the director to create a set that felt haunted by the ghosts of its past. They used a combination of vintage furniture, cracked walls, and worn-out carpeting to evoke a sense of decay, both physical and emotional. But the most important decision Edwards made was to leave certain areas of the house in various stages of deterioration. For example, some rooms were meticulously restored to reflect the home's once pristine state, while others were left in a state of near ruin, as if time itself had stopped in these spaces. This unevenness added an element of unease, as if the house was constantly shifting between past and present. Edwards also ensured that certain details, such as old family photographs and mementos, were scattered throughout the set, providing visual cues to the film's central themes of memory and trauma. The house, as a character in its own right, is not merely a static backdrop but an active participant in the narrative. The filmmakers wanted to imbue it with a haunting presence that would grow more menacing as the story unfolded. This was achieved through a combination of practical set dressing and the strategic use of visual effects. The most memorable example of this occurs during a key scene where Lee walks down a long, dimly lit hallway. As she passes a row of windows, the light flickers, casting ominous shadows across the walls. What the audience doesn't initially realize is that the light flickering isn't just a technical effect. It's a metaphor for the instability of Lee's emotional state. As her perception of reality becomes increasingly distorted, the house mirrors her descent into chaos. The sound design once again plays a crucial role in this scene. The film's score, composed by Nathaniel Hayes, heightens the tension, with a haunting melody that seems to grow more insistent as Lee walks down the hallway. The soundtrack is sparse, allowing the ambient sounds of the house to take center stage. The creaking of floorboards, the distant rustling of curtains, and the low hum of the house's aging infrastructure all combine to create an atmosphere of dread. At the same time, the film's score incorporates subtle tonal shifts, underscoring the psychological nature of the horror. The score doesn't just accompany the supernatural events on screen. It amplifies Lee's internal struggle, making her journey as much an emotional one as a physical one. Another significant technical achievement in Foreclosure 2 is the cinematography. Director of photography Oliver Thompson used a combination of natural and artificial lighting to create an ethereal and dreamlike quality, especially in scenes where the line between reality and the supernatural begins to blur. The film's color palette, dominated by muted blues, grays, and greens, evokes a sense of melancholy and loss, perfectly complementing the film's themes of grief and memory. Thompson's use of shadows is particularly notable. In several scenes, characters are obscured by shadows, their faces partially hidden, suggesting that they are haunted not just by spirits but by their own emotional baggage. The camera work, too, played an important role in enhancing the film's eerie atmosphere. In several key moments, Thompson employed long, slow pans and tracking shots to build suspense. One particularly notable sequence occurs when Lee enters the basement for the first time. The camera lingers behind her, following her every movement as she descends into the darkness. This slow, deliberate pace mirrors Lee's growing sense of dread and foreshadows the revelations to come. The audience, too, is drawn into the house's dark labyrinth, unsure of what lies ahead. One of the most innovative technical feats in Foreclosure 2 was the seamless integration of practical effects with CGI. In the final confrontation between Lee and the house's malevolent forces, the filmmakers used a mix of practical effects, such as physical props and animatronics, with computer-generated imagery to create a surreal, nightmarish landscape. The house itself seems to bend and warp as if it's alive, its walls and floors shifting in ways that defy the laws of physics. The CGI used in these scenes was designed to enhance the physical effects without overshadowing them. The result is a sequence that feels grounded in reality yet surreal, reinforcing the film's exploration of how the past can distort the present. The film also made use of cutting-edge motion capture technology to create some of its more complex supernatural effects. One particularly memorable sequence features a ghostly figure that appears to be floating through the house, its body twisted and contorted in unnatural ways. Rather than relying on traditional CGI animation, the filmmakers used motion capture to record the movement of an actor dressed in a specially designed suit. The actor's performance was then translated into a digital model, which allowed the filmmakers to create an apparition that felt organic and true to the actor's movements. The use of motion capture not only added to the authenticity of the supernatural elements but also allowed the filmmakers to push the boundaries of what was possible in horror filmmaking. Behind every great film lies a wealth of stories about the process of bringing it to life, and Foreclosure 2 is no exception. The production was marked by both challenges and triumphs, with the team pushing the limits of their creativity and technical skills to bring Anderson's vision to fruition. From the haunting set designs to the groundbreaking visual effects, the technical feats in Foreclosure 2 were integral to its success. The film's blend of practical effects and CGI, its innovative sound design, and its thoughtful cinematography all come together to create a deeply immersive experience that keeps audiences on the edge of their seats. What started as a relatively modest horror film quickly became a cinematic achievement that redefined the genre, leaving a lasting impact on both filmmakers and fans alike. Foreclosure 2 is not just a supernatural horror film. It is a deeply layered narrative that explores powerful themes and engages with relevant social commentary. As the audience watches the terror unfold within the walls of a seemingly innocent family home, the film subtly asks larger questions about memory, trauma, societal decay, and the consequences of ignoring the past. These themes are woven into the fabric of the story, and the symbolism throughout the film reflects cultural and societal issues that resonate far beyond the genre's typical thrills and chills. By examining the themes and symbols of Foreclosure 2, we can uncover the deeper meanings that elevate the film, making it more than just a mere horror experience. The central theme of Foreclosure 2 is the inescapable weight of the past. From the first frames of the movie, it becomes clear that the Wilson family's new home is not just a house. It is a vessel of memory, a physical manifestation of past traumas. Lee and Andrew Wilson, the central characters, are portrayed as a family struggling to move on from their respective pasts. Lee, in particular, is haunted by her own unresolved grief, and this internal struggle manifests within the walls of the house. The house itself is not just a setting for the events but a metaphor for the characters' psychological states, particularly their emotional baggage and repressed memories. The house is often framed in ways that emphasize its decaying, yet enduring, nature. Its peeling wallpaper, cracked walls, and rusting fixtures all echo the Wilsons' own fractured lives. The film's symbolism here is clear. The house is a prison of the past, a place where memories of tragedy and loss are trapped and continue to shape the present. Just as Lee and Andrew cannot escape their pasts, they are unable to escape the house's grip, which reflects how trauma continues to haunt and affect individuals long after the events have occurred. This theme of the inescapability of the past is also reflected in the house's supernatural elements. As the family uncovers the tragic history of the Milton family, the house's original owners, they come to realize that the horrors they are experiencing are not just the result of a vengeful spirit, but the result of a cycle of violence, loss, and emotional neglect. The ghosts that haunt the house are trapped within it, unable to move on from their own tragic fates. This parallel between the ghosts and the Wilsons, both bound by unresolved grief, underscores a powerful social commentary on how society deals with trauma and the difficulty of moving forward after tragedy. Much like the ghosts in the house, the characters are unable to find peace because they have not fully confronted their own emotional scars. The film's exploration of trauma extends beyond the individual level to a broader cultural critique of how society often ignores or suppresses the trauma of its people. Lee's reluctance to acknowledge her pain, Andrew's emotional detachment, and the overall sense of isolation that the family feels mirror how many individuals and communities in real life attempt to bury their trauma rather than deal with it. This avoidance is often perpetuated by societal structures that encourage people to move on, to get over it, rather than allowing space for healing and understanding. Foreclosure 2 critiques this tendency, showing that such suppression only leads to further psychological and emotional disintegration. The house, with its ghosts, becomes a metaphor for a society that refuses to address its own dark past, whether it be personal, familial, or collective. One of the most striking symbols in Foreclosure 2 is the attic, a place where the past is both hidden and exposed. The attic, initially appearing as a forgotten and dusty storage space, becomes the focal point for the film's exploration of memory. It is in this space that the Wilsons uncover photographs, old mementos, and other remnants of the Milton family's life. The attic is symbolic of the places where we store our memories, often out of sight, but never truly gone. It represents the past that is repressed but always present, lurking beneath the surface, ready to resurface when least expected. For Lee, the attic symbolizes her buried emotions and unaddressed grief. It is only when she ventures into this space that she is forced to confront the painful memories of her own past. The attic also acts as a visual representation of the emotional compartmentalization that the characters experience. Lee, in particular, is portrayed as someone who has tried to shut away her grief in a place that feels disconnected from her present life. But as the supernatural forces of the house begin to pull her back into the attic, it becomes clear that the past cannot be ignored or locked away forever. The attic is both a literal and figurative space of confrontation, where the characters must face what they have been running from in order to break free. The film's message is clear: suppressing one's pain only leads to further suffering, and true healing can only happen when we confront the darkness within. The presence of the Milton family in the attic is another significant symbolic element in Foreclosure 2. The family's tragic fate is tied directly to the house's haunting, and as the film unravels their story, it becomes clear that their emotional neglect and violence are mirrored in the Wilsons' own struggles. The Milton family represents the generational trauma that is passed down through families, often unspoken and ignored. The film subtly explores how trauma can shape not only individuals but entire family legacies, and how failing to address this trauma can create a cycle of pain that is passed down to future generations. The Milton family's tragic end is a consequence of their inability to deal with their emotions and history, just as the Wilsons' own struggle is rooted in their inability to heal from their pasts. At the heart of Foreclosure 2 is an exploration of memory itself. The film examines how memory is not a static recording of the past but a fluid, often unreliable, force that shapes our present. The haunting elements in the movie, the shadows, whispers, and fleeting figures, are not simply supernatural phenomena. They represent the distortion of memory itself. Just as the house warps and bends in unnatural ways, so too does the past, twisting and reshaping itself in the minds of those who experience it. The ghosts in the film represent the way our memories can become distorted and how, when left unexamined, these memories can take on a life of their own, tormenting us as though they are as real as the present. Foreclosure 2 also offers a subtle commentary on societal decay, particularly in the context of modern housing and the idea of moving on. The family's decision to purchase a dilapidated home, one that has a long history of violence and tragedy, can be seen as a reflection of society's attitude toward neglected spaces and histories. The house is a symbol of decay, both physical and emotional, and the Wilsons' attempts to rebuild their lives within it mirror the larger societal tendency to overlook or paper over problems rather than address them. In a broader cultural context, the house can be seen as a symbol of the neglected areas of society, communities, families, and individuals who are abandoned or ignored by larger systems. The film challenges viewers to think about how society often fails to care for its most vulnerable members, leaving them to bear the weight of unresolved issues that continue to shape their lives. The generational aspect of trauma and neglect in Foreclosure 2 also speaks to broader societal issues such as class and economic hardship. The Wilsons, as a working-class family, are portrayed as trying to escape the constraints of their financial situation by moving into a new home, only to find themselves ensnared by the house's haunting history. This reflects the idea that, no matter how hard people try to escape their past or improve their circumstances, the underlying issues, whether emotional, societal, or economic, can continue to haunt them. The house becomes a metaphor for the struggles of marginalized communities trying to escape their circumstances, only to be ensnared by forces beyond their control. The film's ending, which leaves open the possibility that the Wilsons may never truly escape the house's grip, speaks to the inevitability of history repeating itself. It suggests that, no matter how hard one tries to outrun trauma or societal problems, those issues will always resurface in some form. The haunting that takes place in the house is a metaphor for the haunting of history itself, and the film leaves the viewer with a sense of unease, not just about the supernatural forces at play but about the unrelenting power of the past in shaping the future. In conclusion, Foreclosure 2 is more than just a supernatural horror film. It is a poignant exploration of memory, trauma, and societal decay. The film's themes resonate deeply with real-world issues, reflecting how personal and collective histories can shape individuals' present lives. The symbols throughout the film, particularly the house, the attic, and the Milton family, serve as powerful metaphors for the psychological and emotional struggles faced by the characters, and by extension, society as a whole. By intertwining these themes with a gripping narrative, Foreclosure 2 becomes not just a tale of terror but a reflection on the consequences of ignoring the past and the emotional baggage that we all carry. Through its careful use of symbolism and its exploration of complex social issues, the film invites viewers to reflect on their own relationships with memory, trauma, and the legacies we inherit from those who came before us. In Foreclosure 2, the visual and auditory elements work hand in hand to craft a deeply immersive and unsettling experience. From its cinematography to its sound design, the film's technical choices are intricately tied to its storytelling, amplifying the narrative's tension and emotional depth. The director's vision is executed through a seamless integration of camera work, lighting, editing, and sound, which all contribute to the film's haunting atmosphere. This interplay between the visual language and narrative structure enhances the horror, transforming each frame into an emotional beat that underscores the psychological drama of the characters. The cinematography in Foreclosure 2 is central to its storytelling, employing a style that both highlights the tension between the characters and the supernatural forces within the house, and reinforces the psychological undercurrents of the narrative. Director of photography Oliver Thompson takes a minimalist yet effective approach to framing, often using wide shots to establish the oppressive, isolating nature of the home. The wide shots of the house, frequently captured from the outside, create an atmosphere of confinement, emphasizing the characters' emotional imprisonment. The house is depicted as an ominous, looming presence, with long corridors, tight spaces, and dark corners that suggest the unknown lurking just beyond what the characters can perceive. This sense of physical and psychological entrapment is emphasized visually, with the camera often staying distant, providing the audience a sense of watching the characters from afar, as if the house itself is observing them. Thompson's use of tight framing and confined spaces within the house adds another layer of discomfort to the film. During scenes of heightened tension or supernatural encounters, the camera often pulls in close, focusing on characters' faces, their fear and vulnerability laid bare in the extreme close-up. This technique places the viewer intimately in the character's shoes, enhancing the emotional weight of the moment. In particular, Lee's face is often framed tightly during moments of intense terror, such as when she realizes she is being watched by an unseen presence. These tight shots leave little room for escape, mirroring Lee's own feelings of helplessness as she is consumed by the house's malevolent force. Camera movement plays a crucial role in the film's ability to disorient and unsettle the audience. There is a deliberate use of slow pans and tracking shots to build suspense, allowing the tension to slowly build over time before revealing anything of importance. One of the most effective techniques is the use of slow dolly movements that guide the audience's gaze, often through the dark hallways or shadowed corners of the house. These slow movements create a sense of unease, as the audience is forced to anticipate something sinister lurking just out of sight. This deliberate pacing is critical in horror filmmaking, as it heightens the dread and psychological tension. Thompson also employs subtle handheld camera work in moments of extreme fear or chaos, allowing the shaky, erratic movements of the camera to mirror the characters' panicked states. This choice blurs the line between the character's subjective experience and the viewer's perspective, making the horror feel more immediate and personal. Lighting is another defining feature of the film's visual storytelling, reinforcing the film's themes of psychological decay and disintegration. The use of lighting throughout Foreclosure 2 is both strategic and symbolic. In the beginning, the lighting is relatively bright, evoking the hope and optimism associated with the new home the Wilsons are moving into. However, as the supernatural occurrences increase and the psychological tension builds, the lighting becomes progressively more dim and oppressive. Dark shadows often dominate the frame, with only small slivers of light breaking through, whether from a flickering lamp or a small crack in a door. This use of shadows not only creates a visually arresting image but also mirrors the narrative's shift from hope to despair. The house, once a symbol of a fresh start, becomes a place consumed by darkness, both literally and metaphorically. The attic is one of the most significant spaces in Foreclosure 2, and its lighting scheme is a perfect example of how the visual elements enhance the narrative. The attic, where much of the film's supernatural action occurs, is dimly lit, with pools of light coming from the flickering bulbs or the light filtering through dust-laden windows. These light sources are never constant, always flickering or weak, heightening the sense of instability. The attic's lighting is always inconsistent, just as Lee's perception of reality becomes increasingly unreliable as she struggles to confront the past. As Lee delves deeper into the attic's secrets, the lighting grows darker, casting deep shadows on the walls that seem to stretch and shift, further emphasizing the disintegration of both the house and her sanity. Sound design is equally as important to the film's atmosphere as its visual components. Sound plays an essential role in horror, setting the mood and signaling the presence of danger long before anything tangible is seen. The film's sound design, led by Julia Whittaker, is a masterclass in creating suspense through subtle auditory cues. Whittaker employs a minimalist approach, utilizing sounds from the house itself, creaking floorboards, wind howling through cracks, the distant groan of pipes, to build an unsettling atmosphere. These ambient sounds give the house an organic, alive quality, suggesting that the space itself is conscious, aware, and possibly malevolent. In Foreclosure 2, the emotional core of the film rests heavily on the relationships between the characters, and these relationships are brought to life by a talented ensemble cast. The chemistry between the actors not only grounds the supernatural elements of the story but also enriches the film's deeper themes of trauma, grief, and familial bonds. From the central performances to the subtle contributions of secondary characters, the cast's dynamic is one of the key elements that elevate the film from a standard horror story to something far more emotionally resonant. Lee Wilson, portrayed by Emily Watson, is at the heart of the film's emotional journey. Watson's performance is both restrained and deeply intense, capturing the internal conflict of a woman haunted by her past while grappling with the chilling events that unfold in her new home. The chemistry between Watson and her on-screen husband, Andrew Wilson, played by Michael B. Jordan, is palpable from the very first scene. Their interactions feel genuine, marked by an underlying tension as they navigate the trauma of their pasts. The chemistry between Watson and Jordan adds complexity to their roles, particularly as their characters' emotional distances grow wider throughout the film. There's a subtle but powerful undercurrent of unspoken grief that lingers between them, and it's in these quiet moments, when words fail, that the strength of their performances shines through. Their ability to convey unspoken emotions through fleeting glances and touches gives the audience a deeper understanding of their characters without needing to explicitly spell out their inner turmoil. What's particularly striking about the dynamic between Watson and Jordan is how it mirrors the themes of the film itself. Just as their characters are trapped in a cycle of emotional paralysis, their chemistry feels strained yet unbreakable. The tension between their characters is never forced. Instead, it feels natural, born from the weight of the past they cannot escape. The unspoken pain they share as a married couple adds a layer of tragedy to their interactions, making the horrors that unfold within their home feel even more personal. At times, their chemistry evokes a sense of longing, as if they both yearn for a connection they can no longer access. Secondary characters, such as Sarah, Lee's estranged sister played by Tessa Thompson, and the mysterious neighbor, Mr. Kessler, played by Oscar Isaac, also add significant depth to the film's emotional landscape. Thompson brings a sense of vulnerability to Sarah, who is both a source of comfort and frustration for Lee. Their relationship is marked by moments of closeness and tension, particularly as Sarah becomes increasingly concerned for Lee's mental state. The chemistry between Watson and Thompson feels grounded in years of shared history, which is integral to understanding Sarah's protective instincts and Lee's reluctance to face her own trauma. Meanwhile, Isaac's portrayal of Mr. Kessler injects a sense of quiet mystery into the narrative. Kessler's interactions with Lee and Andrew are initially ambiguous, but his role becomes increasingly important as the supernatural elements intensify. Isaac's calm, measured performance contrasts with the growing chaos of the story, creating a sense of unease every time Kessler appears on screen. The chemistry between Isaac and Watson is subtle but effective, with Kessler's enigmatic presence furthering the tension that surrounds Lee and Andrew. The behind-the-scenes stories and interviews with the cast and crew reveal just how much the actors' chemistry was nurtured and developed over the course of the production. Director Maya Wilson, no relation to the characters, worked tirelessly to create a safe space for the cast to explore the emotional depth of their roles. According to interviews with the cast, Wilson encouraged open dialogue and emotional vulnerability during rehearsals, allowing the actors to build trust with one another before the cameras even started rolling. This sense of camaraderie translated into more authentic, nuanced performances on screen. Watson, Jordan, and the rest of the cast often spoke about the strong bond they formed throughout filming, with many of them citing the group dynamic as essential to the film's success. An interesting tidbit that came to light during an interview with Emily Watson involved the preparation for the emotionally intense scenes between Lee and Andrew. Watson revealed that she and Michael B. Jordan spent several days rehearsing without any lines, focusing purely on their physical interactions. This allowed them to develop an unspoken language, which was especially important in moments where the characters' grief and despair were too overwhelming to articulate verbally. Jordan shared that these rehearsals helped them create a strong emotional foundation for their characters, and they relied heavily on each other's energy during the more difficult scenes. This deep connection between the two actors is evident in the final product, where their chemistry feels natural and effortless, even during the most harrowing moments of the film. But perhaps the most enduring aspect of Foreclosure 2's legacy is the way it continues to resonate with audiences. The film's themes of familial bonds, generational trauma, and the lasting effects of grief have given it a timeless quality. Fans continue to discuss the film long after its release, uncovering new layers of meaning with each viewing. It's a film that rewards repeated engagement, allowing viewers to discover hidden details and thematic depth that they may have missed the first time around. This lasting impact is a testament to the film's complexity and the depth of its storytelling. For those who may not yet have seen Foreclosure 2, it's an essential watch for anyone interested in horror films that are as emotionally engaging as they are terrifying. It offers more than just scares. It offers an exploration of the human condition, a psychological journey that will stay with you long after the credits roll. It's a film that will leave you questioning the nature of fear and trauma, and how the two are intertwined. It's a rare film that achieves both critical acclaim and emotional resonance, making it a standout in the genre and a classic of modern horror. As we wrap up this exploration of Foreclosure 2, it's clear that this film has much more to offer than meets the eye. It's a masterpiece of character-driven horror that continues to influence the genre and inspire future filmmakers. Its lasting impact is evident not only in its critical success but in its ability to connect with audiences on a deeply emotional level. Whether it's the performances, the visual storytelling, or the themes of trauma and loss, every element of Foreclosure 2 contributes to its status as a modern horror classic. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into Foreclosure 2 and its intricate layers, be sure to hit that like button. It really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you more exciting explorations into your favorite films. Don't forget to subscribe, as we'll be diving into more hidden gems and cinematic masterpieces in the near future. We're just getting started, and we can't wait to explore even more of the magic of film with you. Stay tuned, and as always, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of cinema.